is an issue, a topic, and a benefit that is really growing more and more of a necessity in the marketplace, because identity theft protection as an employee benefit really goes beyond just protecting the employees themselves and their families, but also as a function protects the organization or company itself, because over 50% of identity theft breaches that occur to employees that you may have occur via the work site. So it's a very important benefit, and we don't really need to look any further than just 2 days ago with the Capital One risks that a breach that they say is still going to be probably even bigger. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So it's a very important benefit, and I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to join us. As Marcella said, my name is Chris Farman. I'm the Director of Sales for the state of Florida for InfoArmor, and I really appreciate you joining us today. So as I was touching on just a moment ago in the intro, the identity theft is a universal vulnerability. Everybody has identity. When you're looking at voluntary benefits, that implies choice, because some people feel maybe I need disability, maybe I don't. Maybe I need life insurance, maybe I don't. But the bottom line is, if you have an identity, period, then that puts you and your organization at great risk, because identity theft continues to grow. And in the slide later on, you'll see just the year-to-year 17, 18, the number of records stolen is astronomical, and it nearly doubled. So it's an identity theft. It touches every single person that has that, and it goes deeper, because it's your dependents, it's employees, it's relatives, it's families, it's everybody. And every time you log on, anytime you swipe, anytime you enter data any place, it is obtainable in the internet and in the dark web. So really, the choice you have is, what are you going to use as a backstop to prevent that from happening? And that's why identity theft is such an important benefit. So here's the state of the world. This is a pretty alarming slide as soon as I hit the next button, because it's going to is that we've seen between 2004 and 2018. Many of these will be familiar to you, but when you see how rapidly these grow in just this short 14-year period, you will see, and there's a color code along the bottom as, is it an inside job? Was it a hack, stolen device, poor security? What are they? But just take a look at how quickly this bloomed into the massive problem it is today. So you begin way early with the AOL, and Ameritrade. And, people still have AOL accounts out there. There's vulnerabilities that still exist, and I'll touch on that later. But here's how we progress through the years. This is, alarming data. Eisenhower Medical Center, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Your medical data is a significant point of interest to hackers and nefarious threat actors in the marketplace. But here's we go. Home Depot, remember when that one was hitting. Target, Uber, everybody recognizes this. There's MySpace. That's another one that most people probably don't even remember they had that account, don't even know that they were hacked there. Twitter, Equifax, which was big just a couple years back. But look how quick this populates. This is an alarming amount. And it still progresses, because obviously this one stops last year, so we can add Capital One and all the ones that have happened since then. But I had mentioned earlier in the when I was speaking that we'll show the number of records that have been stolen just year over year. So here's 2017, call it 180 million records were exposed in the marketplace. Just 1 year later, that's nearly 500 million. So it's an epidemic, and it's not going anywhere. And I can guarantee you that the year over year, when we update this slide from 18 to 19, is going to show an even more egregious and scary leap in the number of records that are exposed in the marketplace. And identity thieves, they don't discriminate. They go after everybody. They go after children. They go after elderly. They go after deceased relatives and identities on there. So, as I was saying before, unlike other benefits, it's a protection that everybody needs, regardless of your income, your job, or your geographic location. An identity is stolen in the U.S. 2 seconds. And that's It's significant. But what's really important, particularly if you're an employer and you don't have any kind of coverage in place, is the amount of time it's going to take a person on average to restore their identity. This says 100 to 200, because the number is actually about 188 hours is what it takes to restore your own identity. If you don't have an identity theft protection coverage like InfoArmor, that can do that for you. That can also help prevent it and monitor and do the necessary steps to even prevent that from happening. But the bottom line is, it can be your 200 hours or it can be my 200 hours. I think it's a much better. I think I need to have that put off on somebody who does it for a living. And then, of course, it's the number one complaint. But it's also one of the most rapidly growing. In fact, it's the most rapidly growing requested voluntary benefit in the marketplace since 2016. And that's just because it's becoming more and more. Like we said, just this week we had that Capital One, and next week it'll be something else. So everybody hears the dark web, but nobody really, I don't think, knows what that is. And you hear ads on TV where people say, we mine the dark web and things like that. Well, first of all, you can't really mine the dark web. You either have the access and the cyber street cred, if you will, to enter these dark forums, or you don't. If you're using the word mining, that means you're doing the most cursory pinning of your member clients. You know, looking for maybe the odd social security number or something like that. But everybody does that. That's not bringing anything new to the table. But what a lot of people don't realize is they think that the dark web is just some small corner of the web. But in fact, it's the vast majority of the web. For example, 6% of the internet is not accessible by search engines like Google. That's the dark web. You know, the Google stuff, you want to look up who you went to high school with and those kind of things, or somebody brings up a band and you're trying to remember where they're from. You know, those are simple things that you can do on Google. All the identity theft, all the bartering, all the nefarious activities are happening in that 96%. That is just totally unregulated, totally unwatched, and totally rogue in the industry, or on the internet. So when you're looking at what's bartered in that segment, you see that social security number, it's only $1 per social. In the scheme of things that hackers are looking for, that's really just a small piece. It's the thing that everybody thinks of. It's the thing that, you know, when they say they're mining the dark web, that they're paying for, but it's got no significant monetary value to the hacker unless you do it in massive quantities. And that's why you see some of those numbers, 500,000 here, 1 million there, those kind of things. It's because that's how that dollar adds up. But by and large, and in and of itself, the cost of a social security number on the dark web is peanuts, if you will. But then you start moving over into where it's value. And I'll get further into this a little bit later. But medical records can fetch significant amounts of money on the dark web. That's how people can pirate off your health insurance. Somebody who's otherwise uninsurable for a policy, or needs some sort of medical coverage, maybe something significant, but doesn't have the resources or the coverage to do it. They use your health history to be able to get by that, and that's why there's such significant value on that, because it provides such an entree to everybody. And then lastly, your higher identity. Now you're looking at date of birth, social, your medical records, your passport numbers, all those sort of things that they can get. Now that's starting to fetch $1,200. Now that adds up pretty quick. If you multiply that by 1 million person breach, that's a significant dollar amount. But the thing with the dark web, it says on here, and I'll touch on it a little later, because you really have to have a human element to get in there. Your artificial intelligence can do many functions of this, but it's really having that cyber street cred, if you will, to get into that 96%, because you just can't get into the dark web, into those forums where people are doing things as grotesque as hiring hitmen or human trafficking beyond just your identity theft protection. You just can't go wander in and start snooping around. You have to get by 6, 10, levels of authentication to reach into those dark resources to really be able to make sense of what's happening and find and prevent and help your employee base that you're covering. So once the breach does happen, though, then what? You know, the impact on your employee is significant because it's going to impact every point of their life. You're buying a car, you're buying property, whatever the case may be. It's going to impact every corner of your life. 15 million people in 2018 had their identity stolen, and the impact there is tremendous. Almost $70 million in losses. That's out-of-pocket losses to those who had their information stolen. 1 in 5 had to freeze their credit. And if you freeze credit, it's not that easy to unfreeze it. You know, there's 2 options. You can freeze your credit or you can lock your credit. And there's a good analogy there. So if something is frozen, to re-access it, you have to thaw it, melt it, so that you can gain re-access to it. So that's a very deep and significant lock. No, lock's not the right word. That's the other way. But a significant hold on your credit, because it's not something you can just throw the switch on or turn a key, which is what locking your credit does. Locking your credit allows you to lock it and unlock it much more freer than the other. So it's important to keep in mind. So 1 in 5 had to take the tremendous step of freezing their credit. That shows you how deep the impact was. 22% had to take time off of work. So you're either burning vacation days or you're missing time, straight time, which could put your actual employment in jeopardy. But you've got to go stand in line at Social Security for 8 hours to get something done. So it's a tremendous impact on the employee. And then, of course, nearly 34% are going to have trouble getting loans again because of the credit issue that it generates. Just employees that is targeted by these threat actors. It's actually children. I mentioned children and I mentioned deceased folks because once somebody passes away, that data, that presence on the net is still out there and can still be pirated, still be utilized for other nefarious acts. And if that's not being monitored, which we do, you have no idea of knowing that a deceased relative's information has been used and violated on the web. It also is the same thing for children. And what makes children particularly attractive and why an infant's data can fetch as much as $300 on the web is it's pristine, right? It's not touched. And no one, in most instances, nobody's going to know that their information breached until they go to buy that first car, or they apply for a loan or do something, apply for a loan to go to college, whatever the case may be. It could be 18 years before you even know that your credit has been decimated. And that is a tremendous disservice, but that's what makes it so valuable on the dark web. And 2 alarming stats on here. Obviously, that 1 million children were affected by identity theft, but the 6% knew the victim. So that means somebody already, it's a relative or an acquaintance that had some personal information, could fill out forms and do some things a little easier than even perhaps a straight hacker could because they have that insider knowledge. But it's alarming that 60% is somebody known to the child. And then, of course, 11% of households had their child's personal information compromised in just the past 12 months. That's a scary stat, but it goes beyond. So there's your family impact to your children, to your deceased relatives, and also to the employee themselves and their life. But what about the organization itself, the company that the employee is working for? I mentioned earlier that 50% of identity originates in the workplace. And that's because people, they're not supposed to in many instances, but will use personal computer or the work computer for personal data, to check a web page or to see what's happening on an eBay or whatever the case may be. But all of those throw open a portal into your corporate organization's server and cyber security. it puts a vulnerability on it. But that 50% is a large, alarming number, and it's certainly going to increase most of the time. And then, of course, we'd already mentioned that 22% are going to be forced to take time off of work if they don't have a result. But look at the impact to the bottom line of an organization that doesn't have this, but then experiences identity theft, whether it's vast or limited in their employee population. The impact on the broader scope still results in 20% lower sales, 17% less productivity, 21% lower profitability. Obviously, the 20 and the 17 contribute that to 1. And of course, safety issues increase by 70%, and then you have turnover. And all of this comes from the stress and the uncertainty of going through this. The lower sales, your sales team have no protection in place. Are they focused on year-end goals? Not in the short term, trying to fix this identity theft protection issue. And they're going to invest at least the next 188 hours on average to get that done, much of which is going to be on your company time, which impacts the productivity and drags that down, which then goes to the lower profitability. And the safety issues come up because your head's not in the game. So it's a significant issue, and the turnover goes into people missing work, so they get let go, or whatever the case may be. But there's several factors that go into that, but that's certainly one key. Is it because you can't have your employer to get that done and expect to maintain your employment. So it's a very, very significant impact on the employee base. So, what makes InfoArmor different? We've been doing this for more than 10 years. Frankly, we're sneaking up on our 15th year. In the group identity theft protection space, we're the biggest player on the block. In the straight consumer market, there's some other names that are out there. We were born in the group space. That's what we do. So we've been working with clients. We work with brokers, consultants, and agents, but handling clients much like you folks on the line live in the expectation level of deliverables benefits. So over this time frame, we have a 99% retention rate. So that tells you it works, people are happy with it, and it stays around and it does its job. The account management, the ongoing satisfaction also grades at 99% because that comes to the resolution. We have never not restored an identity. That's going to get you the 99% ongoing account management satisfaction. Also, there's ever a billing issue or anything like that, cleaning those sort of things up. And then implementation. The last thing you need when you're enrolling your company and you've got a change in your medical coverage and that's being communicated to the employees and things like that is to have your identity theft or any voluntary benefit, your identity theft coverage creating headaches, static, and delays on your implementation. We've got a 97% satisfaction rate on there. And as I said, we're the largest player in the group space, and we've been only in that space our entire lives. And that's how you get more than 30% of Fortune 500 as your client. And everybody from Disney to FedEx to UPS to Porsche to Timex, just to name a few. But that's how you get there, and then those numbers on the top shelf are how you stay there and how you grow that. I had talked about earlier protecting the family. A lot of identity theft protection products out there, whether they're group or straight to consumer, have limitations on the number of dependents that they will cover. We don't have that. We have a generous rule that we consider under roof or under wallet. So if they live with you or are financially dependent upon you, then we will cover them as under your policy as a dependent and afford them all the full services as well, the guaranteed restoration, all of those things. We also do not limit the number of accounts that we do. Many of our competitors will limit that to 10. Well, if you're a family of 4 or a family of 5, you can cap out your 10 manageable accounts pretty quickly before you really get through all of the really most significant ones that you're concerned about. We don't limit that. If you want us to monitor 100 accounts, then we'll monitor 100 accounts. Now, you do have to load them in. We need to know what to monitor, but once they're in, then we are responsible for them. And then, of course, our privacy advocates are available 24/7. We're all US-based. Everybody's housed in Scottsdale. We are opening another office on the East Coast, but everybody is in Scottsdale, which is Pacific time, but the hours are 24/7. So where their site is really immaterial. But all US-based. Nothing is outsourced. We own everything: the product, the personnel, and all the intelligence and all the capabilities. So there's two segments, right? We talked about the employee and we talked about the company itself. And I don't want to be too redundant on here out of respect for y'all's time, but the comprehensive monitoring, the fraud remediation restoration, we guarantee that we'll do that. The identity theft reimbursement. There's two components to the identity theft reimbursement. Each is backed by $1 million. So one is the reimbursement if you're our client and you experience identity theft and there is any out-of-pocket expense, you've got to hire a lawyer, you got to pay for documents, you got to get something notarized, whatever the case may be, we will reimburse any out-of-pocket expense up to $1 million to our clients. We also will replace lost or stolen funds up to $1 million. So if we are monitoring an HSA or a 401k or your banking or savings account, if somebody took $70,000 out of an employee's 401k, we will reimburse that. And that is, we are the pioneers of that. We started that, and it's a strong separator in the marketplace. And then all the other, the dark web monitoring we touched on, financial transactions, all those things. Lost wallet protection. If you lose that, we can lock everything down. We take care of it for you with everything that's in your wallet. We handle. If things need to be reissued, whatever the case may be. And then this there's two here, but the social media, that's significant for dependents. It's good for the employee as well, but really social media, you're looking at Snapchat and LinkedIn and Facebook and all those kind of things. People take that over. Cyberbullying, we all read about. That's a thing that happens. And our intelligence can monitor shifts in the personality, if you will, of people's social media presence and can lock that down, identify when takeovers have been put in place and prevent that from happening. We do not have any pre-existing conditions clause or limitations. So if you come on and you become a client of ours at any point, and there's an existing situation going on, we will take that over as our own and remediate it. As I said, we've never not remediated. And then the digital exposure. We talked about all those when I did that slide where all of the breaches occurred, and you saw Facebook, or not Facebook, but AOL and MySpace and things like that. People have no idea what their digital exposure really is on the web. If you ask people how many accounts they have on the web, most will say somewhere in the neighborhood of 20. And that number is actually creeping up on 100 because nobody remembers that MySpace account. Nobody remembers that AOL account, or that they opened up a Sears card to buy a refrigerator 12 years ago, or whatever the case may be. Those are all footprints that are still out there. And those are all access points to your PII, your personal information, identifying information. And that makes you vulnerable. So it's significant. And then we talked about the company too, attract and retain talent, reduce litigation, protect the actual company itself, cybersecurity, decrease absenteeism, and also decrease presenteeism. Because if an employee is going through this and they don't have coverage, they may be sitting at their desk, but their brain is 10,000 miles away. Remember those slides with the impact to the company's bottom line, because they're worried about other things that go on. And it provides the peace of mind. So I was talking about those, the social media impact out there. Look at these numbers. 350,000. This is every 60 seconds. This is happening. These are just 6 of the online apps, social media applications that are available out there. And this is the amount of activity that is happening every second. Just think how long we've been on this call now and do the math on these things. It's astronomical. Every one of those is a vulnerability point for a person out there. And people just don't think about it. So this is redundant, but we talked about this: 22% off of work, denied credit, 15% sell property, and 48% have a medical-related stress issue. So it's all backed by security, right? And that's the bottom line. We have a perfect track record. Never ever had any security incidents on our site, and we have virtually 100% uptime on the site. We do two-factor authentication, sorry about that. But the top one is what's significant. Seriously secure. That's the highest and most security accreditation that you can have in our line of work. Now, there is a minimum, and some competitors will do the minimum required to be eligible to do this line of work. But we do the most that is available. And the reason some don't do that is because there's significant costs with those levels of accreditation on there. And some companies just don't want to spend it. Our take is this is what we do. It's all we do. So we better be putting our money where our mouth is. And the friction-free authentication, everything goes online. Service record is impeccable. So I had mentioned the artificial intelligence is one thing, but it's the human operatives that are the ones that really can get in and do that raking and scraping of the dark web to find the data. Our human operatives gain access to these forms because they have that cyber street cred that allows them to get in. And because of that level of authentication, we can be much more proactive than many of our competitors out there. To those corners where our competitors can't. We were notifying our of the yacht breach and Marriott breach over a year before those actually happened. And well, the other 500,000 people were dragged in and made aware of it and making changes. They were already. We report corporate risks by profiling threat actors and patterns and moves. And again, really the scraping and the threat actor profiling, those two things that just nobody else don't have the data. And then we take that data and we structure it into a deliverable to you, the end user, to keep you and all your employees aware of what and who has been exposed. So it delivers peace of mind. It's more than credit monitoring. You know, when somebody says, oh, my bank provides that to me, or I got credit monitoring from Home Depot during that breach, or whatever the case may be. That's better than nothing. I would give you that. But credit monitoring is just the base level deliverable if you have an identity theft protection. It is so much more than that in that line. I think we've covered all of that, but that list of things on the right, those are the differentiators. Anybody in this line of business can credit monitor, but not everybody can do all these other and provide all these other resources. So, I mean, that's really the presentation. I really just wanted to, again, consider its impact on you personally, your employees, and your organizations. All do vulnerable. And that opens up a significant risk out there, and this is the best way to provide that kind of a peace of mind in the most cost-effective way. So.
Sorry, Chris, you were cutting out a little bit there, but if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type those into the chat box now. We did have a couple questions roll in. So, Chris, does this protect the business besides the individuals?
Exposing or the breach percent happens by and through the employee.
Sorry, Chris, is there, you keep cutting out. I don't know if there's any way you can fix that a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
You know what?
So
Let me try and go to the headset. I've got you on speaker. Let me do the headset. It might be a little better. So I'm going to go dark here for a second.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, is this better?
Yes, it is. And throughout the presentation, there were some moments, but I mean, for the most part, it was pretty good. Just at the end, there, for some reason, it was cutting out a lot. So yeah, they asked, does this protect the business besides the individuals?
It does, but it does it through the individuals, because we're monitoring not only the employee's work email address, but all IP addresses we will monitor as well. So their personal ones and things like that. So if they're using the work computer for accessing some other forums or things like that perhaps they shouldn't, those IP addresses are monitored. So if we see any kind of nefarious activity happening on either the corporate domain or any of the monitored IPs, that's something that we can alert to. We also can identify through the employer domain and the threat intelligence that I was talking about towards the end. It can determine and alert to things such as phishing scams and things like that, and put out warnings and identifications on that. And in addition, we will also provide any ongoing security training that any employer would want. We can provide that as well.
Okay, great. And is there a minimum number of employees needed to get started with this service?
No, there's no minimum size group, and there's no minimum participation.
Perfect. And how long does the implementation normally take?
It can be pretty quick. Obviously, we would like to have at least 2 weeks, but we know that that's sometimes a luxury, particularly if you're using any type of enrollment platform or vehicle, just to get the test feed done and everything like that. But that being said, we've done it in shorter time, and with 1/1s looming, that window's gonna tighten a lot more moving up. But we would like to have at least the 2-week window to get that in.
Perfect. And if somebody wants a quote or an in-depth demo, how would they go about getting that?
Well, the quote, they should reach out to you all there with the where you have the questions and things up, and then I can run the proposals back through you to them. Those are pretty easy to knock out, and we can get those done. We're doing hundreds of those a month, so we can get that done. But we'll just need to be notified by you who wants them, and if you wanted to see demos of the product and things like that, that can be arranged.
Sure, perfect. We do have one other question that rolled in here. Can you elaborate on the coverage for pre-existing conditions?
Right. So so many of our competitors either A, won't cover any pre-existing condition, which means if you buy their product or this product, but it's not from InfoArmor, you buy an identity theft product, and you've already been breached. You've already had a credit card situation. You've already had an identity stolen and an impact to your credit score and that sort of thing. If it happened prior to the effective date of the coverage, many of our competitors just will not cover it. They only cover things after that. The other ones of our competitors who will agree to cover pre-existing condition clause or situations will charge to do so. So there's an upcharge for taking on that burden. At InfoArmor, again, this is what we do. It's all we do. So we do not have any upcharge or anything to that. We will take on, there's no pre-existing exclusion whatsoever. So if somebody comes on and they've got an ongoing issue, they've been fighting it for 6 months, and they come on with the 9/1 effective, call us 1 minute after midnight, 9/1, and it becomes our problem, if you will. And we guarantee we will remediate it and restore it to its pre-breach level.
All right, great. Thank you for clarifying that. That looks to be all the questions we have for now. So just want to remind everybody you will be receiving a follow-up email from us. We're going to provide you with some of the information you've seen today. And I just want to thank you, everybody, for attending, and thank you, Chris, for doing such a great job presenting.
It's my pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.